previous videos I've shown this mimic panel here, and yes, I can use this using JMRI, but I wanted to be able to use this panel without JMRI and be able to still use it. So this is what I'm going to show you today. It's a work in progress, and hopefully, in the next few months, the new node will become available. So as I've said, it is early days, so I'm only in the alpha testing. And the first thing I wanted to do was to be able to create the CDI within JMRI. And I started off using one of the basic nodes from the OpenLCB single thread library. And then I've been adapting it, so I ended up with what I've got here. So I've called the node my root setter. Obviously for now I've just put in alpha test. Then what I've decided, I needed 5 push buttons. So these are here, so route 1, route 2, 3, 4 and 5. And then for each route, I'm going to need to be able to trigger a maximum. I think at the moment it's going to be about 6 turnouts. So I'm going to need to be able to set up the events. So this will, when the push button's been pressed, will trigger these routes. So as I say, this is the start of it. And up to now, yes, I've got all the mem structure correct. So all the event IDs are now showing up. And I'll just show you the basics within the Arduino IDE. So the first thing I did, I added a config.h. And here I've got my new usual node address and the reset to factory defaults. And then here you can see I'm defining a number of routes. And in this case, I've got 5 routes. And the number of events is 6 times a multiple of the number of routes. Again, at the moment, I'm under GC serial connection, so I'm using the USB lead to be able to connect to the node just to see that things are working correctly. Obviously, I've made a few changes to this screen here compared to what comes when you get it off the OpenLCB single thread library. But here you can see the CDI structure. So what we've got here, it is a group, and then what we've got, so we've got the route setting events, which appears at the top, and then a slight description here of what it's going to be used for. Now this one here, I'd never used this before, but this was something new I'd seen, and this is just telling you how many times to replicate it. Now there is another way we can do that, but at the moment I've stuck with this way to keep things simple. And then I've got another name here, which is routes controlled by a single push button, so that's another descriptor. And then what we've got is what we call a rep name for routes. Now because we don't put anything here, it'll automatically start with route 1, and it will iterate to the number of times we replicate the CDI. And then what we've got here is a string 16, the descriptor. So I can knock this up if I want to, maybe 24, which allows me then to make a bigger name for it when it goes into the CDI for referencing later on. Then all I've got here is these are the events or the event names that I'm going to use. This really is more what's going to appear above them. So in this case, I've used turnout 1 to trigger. And then obviously I can do this. So I can increase this if I wanted more turnouts to be able to used or whatever. And then we just close the groups. And that is that bit done. The next important part is the mem structure. Now this threw me for a little while. We've got these bits here, which, yes, these allow us to change, or is the option node name changes and the likes of that, but I couldn't work out why I couldn't see that up here anywhere. But that gets set up in another part of the sketch, so that's nothing to worry about. We couldn't, extend the number of characters if we wish. So, if it says 24, you're really only getting 23 characters that you can modify. But then here we've got a structure that is used for the creating the memory locations. Now I might be using some of the incorrect terms because I'm not a professional programmer by any means. I'm self-taught and I try my best. But what I'm doing here is I'm giving each event basically a node. So here you can see what it works out as. So it's a class of an event ID, and it's been offset by 16 bytes, and the size is 8 bits or bytes. So I couldn't put root 1 in because you can't use a number, so it's root A, B, C, D, E, and F. And then here we finished the structure off by saying it's for the input and it's the number of roots. So this saves us we could put a magic number in here if we wished, but it's nice to stick things with, the variables that we set in the config.h. Then the next thing I had to do was create the constant EID tab. Now when I first did it, I used this technique here. And as you can see, it gets very repetitive. So for each of those events up here, we have to set this up to say it's an input, and it's for channel 1 or root 1, which would be 0. We've got A, B, up to the final letter up here, which is F. Then I have to repeat it again for every one of the 5 roots. So that was the first way I did it, and that's a lot of repetitiveness, and it's easy to make a mistake. So the next thing was I wanted to try a different way of doing it, and then what we did then, we define the PID roots, and then it's an I. So what we've got here then is the same as what we had here, but we only do it once for all the first row, but we call it I. Then the next thing we do, we use this bit which we had previous up here, so we're not changing that, and then we just set this up here, which then it's PID roots, and then in the brackets it's 0, 1, 2, 3, which replicated this. So that allowed me then to create the CDI within CMRI. Obviously, I'm not going to go too much into detail. This is a video which is also going to aid me in the future to remember how to do this. So these videos are a teaching aid and a learning aid for myself. The next thing I want to do within CMRI is above this section here, the next thing I want is to put a global variable so I can have a drop down menu which allows me to set and it's only going to be one use, that'll do all of them, a time between the triggers. So that's the next thing I'm working on, and hopefully that will be done maybe today or tomorrow. But I just thought I'd make this video to let people see what goes on behind the scenes to create some of these nodes. Obviously, once I've got a bit more into it, I'll show you how we do the actual callback, or we use PCA callbacks. But hopefully, if you find this type of thing interesting, add something in the comments, because it all helps motivate me to make these videos, even though this one is really to aid me in the future. Anyway, thank you for watching. Bye now.